Hello, everybody, and welcome to my group's future scanning presentation for Entrepreneurship 301. Our group consists of Shelby Reece, Stephen Chavez, Madison McSwain, and myself, Matt Smart. We will be presenting on the topic of agriculture and how technology and innovation will help preserve, protect, and enhance the agricultural field. Before we begin to look at the past, present, and future of agriculture, I would first like to define the topic. Agriculture is the science or practice of farming, including cultivation of the soil for the growing of crops and the rearing of animals to provide food, wool, and other products. To know what the future of agriculture entails, we must look into the past and see what we can learn from it. It is predicted by 2050 we will see starvation across the globe. The future of agriculture can be promising. For agriculture to have a future that provides for the entire globe, it would have to be processed like manufacturing. Everything needs to be tightly controlled to have a complete control of the outcome. If you look to the left of the screen at the chart, you can look at the daily calories per person by type of food. In 1970, you can see that the average person was consuming around 2,700 calories, and that the forecast of 2050, the average person is going to be consuming over 3,000 calories. Before we can look at the future of agriculture, we must study the history and look into the past. Before agriculture really took root, all that people had to rely on for food was hunting and gathering. Around 12,000 years ago, that is when people began to form agriculture. The beginning of agriculture sparked what is known as the Neolithic Revolution. Having sustainable food sources made it possible for the population to grow exponentially because there was no longer a survival of the fittest mindset. Agriculture has made the world what it is today, creating cities and large civilizations and making it to where people do not have to go and hunt and gather or even grow their own food unless they want to. The next couple of slides we're still going to be looking into the past of agriculture. 10,000 before Christ, the Neolithic Revolution, people changed from the hunter-gatherer lifestyle to the beginnings of gardening and domesticating animals. Three Sisters gardening is one of the earliest forms of farming. These plants were planted together because they provide nutrients that help the others grow. This process was developed over 6,000 years ago. The plants included in the Three Sisters gardening technique is squash, corn, and beans. Moving forward into the 1800s, we had what is called the agricultural revolution. This brought more diverse crops and the idea of crop rotation. Combined with the use of livestock, it changed the world of agriculture. Moving about 100 years forward, in the 1960s was the mechanical revolution. New technology became available such as the tractor, the seed drill, and the combine, all which are still used today. Moving into the 2000s, you get into the biotech revolution. This brought us genetically engineered and genetically modified organisms. This helps increase crop production. As we start to look into the current technology in agriculture, things are already very impressive. Scientists and farmers are linking together and now working on IoT technology with the agricultural field. Internet of Things has become the technology that is taking over everything. All aspects of life are being automated. In farming, IoT is making tractors self-driven and making barns automated so that all farmers have to do is get on the computer and input a quantity for animal feed. With this technology, we can do more in less time. Since the average age of a farmer is around 60 years old, there are less people getting into farming on a large scale. With the exponentially growing population, we will rely on this technology to be able to provide for everyone. In this slide, we're going to be looking on how technology in agriculture has changed the food industry. It is constantly changing, and it's very neat to look at the technology currently in the industry. For example, the first plow that was made had to be pulled by a horse. And then the tractors were created in the 1960s, which was in the mechanical revolution, and they were used to pull a plow. The first tractors that were made had to be driven and operated by someone. Now tractors have GPS technology And this means that you can enter the location and it will drive itself and plant, plow, cut whatever you want it to do. This is only a glimpse of what technology has brought in our agriculture. If you look in the bottom right of the screen, you can read a fun fact. Over 200 years ago, 90% of the U.S. population lived on farms. For agriculture to be sustained in the future, it must be integrated into cities, which is also known as urban agriculture, urban farming, and urban gardening. This is the practice of cultivating, processing, and distributing food in or around urban areas. Urban agriculture can also involve animal husbandry, aquaculture, agroforestry, urban beekeeping, and horticulture. These activities occur in peri-urban areas as well, and peri-urban agriculture may have different characteristics. Urban agriculture can reflect varying levels of economic and social development. It may be a social movement for sustainable communities where organic growers, also known as foodies and locavores, form social networks founded on a shared ethos of nature and community holism. These networks can evolve when receiving formal institutional support, becoming integrated into local town planning as a transition town movement for sustainable urban development. For others, food security, nutrition, and income generation are key motivations for the practice. In either case, more direct access to fresh vegetables, fruits, and meat products through urban agriculture can improve food security and food safety. Looking at the slide, you can see that with the population growing more rapidly, more houses, hospitals, schools, malls, and etc. are being built. This gives us less farmland and makes it harder to produce enough food for everyone. The International Network of Food Resources Centers on Urban Agriculture and Food Security, also known as RUAF, has found a way to increase production of food with less space. In 2005, the RUAF began a partnership with cities farming for the future program and became the RUAF-CFF. They selected 20 pilot cities with 3 to 4 in each region. This partnership ignited the flame of urban agriculture. Urban farming is more than just a way to produce more food. It creates jobs, cuts costs of transporting foods from rural areas, and generation of income. The importance of farming has become obvious to these cities. Agriculture is a viable part to the urban socio-economic and ecological system. Continuing on urban agriculture, the future of agriculture is sustainable farming. Sustainable farming means growing just enough to feed your family, like back in the day. You grow what you eat. With more people and less land, people are going to have to start growing food wherever they can. Whether that is on top of buildings or in their homes, most people are just going to have to start sustainable farming. Studies show that a city the size of London could produce nearly 30% of all fruit and vegetable requirements of the population within the boundaries of that city. Urban agriculture became a landmark in defining an international role when the book of Urban Agriculture, Food, Jobs, and Sustainable Cities came out in 1996. Seedpool, also known as Continuous Productive Urban Landscape, is a strategy used in urban farming. Seedpool brings a strategy to integrate this design into cities, therefore creating a landscape that has a purpose. For this to work, there will have to be a creation of multifunctional urban space or agricultural parks that is open networks that complete and support the environment. Urban agricultural practices range from small-scale gardening to high-yield market gardening that is space efficient. Urban farming is also a way to add natural habitats back to the city, as well as create outdoor spaces for people to enjoy. In this slide, we'll be looking at the scenario of space efficiency and LARS technology. LARS stands for Low Altitude Remote Sensing. Site-specific crop management, otherwise known as SSCM, is used to save space during crop planting. Horticulture is a rapidly growing part of agriculture. Since 2004, India has seen an increase in the use of horticulture to help produce more food for their population. The main problem that we have with agriculture is the decreasing amount of land that is available to farm. India has found a way to produce more from less. By using space technology, growers are provided with vigorous and trustworthy techniques for deciding on spatial management for their fields. Low altitude remote sensing, LARS, technology is a manned airplane that flies about 300 to 1,000 meters above the crops. LARS technology collects data from the plants that tells crop duration during different parts of the growing season, from application of the seeds, fertilizer, pesticides, waters, and etc. With LARS technology, they also use an unmanned aerial vehicle, also known as a UAV, that fly at 10 to 300 meters above fields. This technology can tell the farmer crop yield estimation, monitor crop growth, monitor crop acreage change, monitor soil moisture, monitor for disasters, as well as serve as information. Drone technology is also starting to be researched to be used in agriculture. The use of drones would help improve irrigation systems, crop yield prediction, manage crop disease, pest management, along with the unpredictable seasonal variations. Agricultural Insurance Company of India, along with other company named Skynet, began investigations in August of this year to evaluate the viability of UAV technology. In the future scanning of agriculture, we must also look at herbicides and the future of them, also commonly known as weed killers. They are substances used to control unwanted plants. Selective herbicides control specific weed species while leaving the desired crop relatively unharmed, while non-selective herbicides, sometimes called total weed killers in commercial products, can be used to clear waste ground, industrial and construction sites, railways and railway embankments, as they kill all plant material with which they come into contact. Apart from selective and non-selective, other important distinctions include persistence, also known as residual action, how long the product stays in place and remains active, means of uptake, whether it is absorbed by above ground foliage only through the roots or by other means, and mechanism and action, which is how it works. Historically, products such as common salt and other metal salts were used as herbicides. However, these have gradually fallen out of favor, and in some countries a number of these are banned due to their persistence in soil and toxicity and groundwater contamination concerns. Herbicides have also been used in warfare and conflict. Weeds are a big challenge in horticulture. They take nutrients away from the plants, essentially reducing productivity of the crop. Dr. Mike DeProst has found a way to take care of weeds without chemicals. This newfound herbicide is called electricide. The technology works by simply touching the weed to create a circuit. Once you get a flow of electricity, the natural resistance of the weed turns the electricity to heat and boils the weed from the inside out. And it starts in the roots and works upwards. The product is paired with computer vision. It sees and zaps weeds when they are pulled across a field. Rootwave partnered with Stekti. Stekti is a company that produced a camera that spots and identifies weeds. This company is hoping in the future to pair the technology with an autonomous tractor to be able to control weeds at a much better rate. In this slide, we'll be looking at GM and GMO technology in plants. You may be asking yourself, what exactly is a GMO? A GMO, or genetically modified organism, is a plant, animal, microorganism, or other organism whose genetic makeup has been modified in a lab using genetic engineering or transgenic technology. This creates combinations of plant, animal, bacterial, and virus genes that do not occur in nature and through traditional crossbreeding methods. Genetic modification affects many of the products we consume on a daily basis. As the number of GMOs available for commercial use grows every year, the non-GMO project works diligently to provide the most accurate, up-to-date standards for non-GMO verification. Modification is used in crop production to adapt crops to the ever-changing environment. We are facing heat like we have never seen before, and crops cannot withstand that extreme heat. GM technology is used to adapt plants to live with less water, be resistant to pathogen and insect threats, and be Roundup ready. Many people believe that biotechnology used in agriculture is not good for us and that it should not be used. What people do not realize is without this technology, there will never be enough food produced to feed a population that is expected to grow by 3 billion by the mid-21st century. The first few genetic modification crops that have been tested are insect and herbicide resistance are corn, cotton, canola, and soybeans. There are health benefits associated with GMOs, and these are decreased use of pesticides and herbicides. Continuing on that, Monsanto is the company that created the strain of soybean that is Roundup Ready. The soybeans are engineered to tolerate the herbicide glyphosate. In 2017, Monsanto's soybean sales totaled $2.7 billion. The gross profit from these beans climbed 35% from 2016. It beat the 15% growth of the corn franchise. Soybeans are the key ingredient in animal feed. Having crops that are resistant to herbicide makes it easier to keep weeds at a minimum. This will boost the yield that is received from the crops. Genetic modification began as just selective breeding in hopes to get the gene that you want. It is said that dogs are likely the first animal to be genetically modified. Wheat is the first plant that was genetically modified. Bacteria is another thing that has been genetically modified to be used to create medications. GMO crops are very important to the future of agriculture because without it we will not produce enough food. Crops that are genetically modified also help limit contamination to groundwater because they are not having to be sprayed with pesticides continuously. Livestock are also being genetically modified. They are hand-chosen and bred to have more muscle mass and to build disease resistance. For example, chickens. It takes 6 weeks for a broiler meat chicken to fully develop for slaughter. Whereas if you were to go to a local feed store and buy some chicks, it would take 22 weeks for them to fully mature. Currently, there are no animal products on the U.S. market that are genetically modified or engineered. In the United States, livestock have been consuming feed made from genetically modified crops for almost 20 years. More than 2/3 of genetically modified corn and half of GM soybeans are used for livestock feed. In that time, GMOs have never been dedicated in milk, meat, or eggs derived from animals fed genetically modified feed, meaning livestock process GMO feed in the same way as any other feed. Many studies have been conducted on the potential for GMO DNA or proteins to be transferred into animal tissues. No intact or immunology reactive protein or DNA has been detected in animal tissue. Although animals are not currently genetically modified in the current market, scientists all over the globe are doing studies on how to go about doing it. There have been some successful genetically modified animals. This includes the EnviroPig. The EnviroPig emits up to 65% less phosphorus into the environment than a traditional pig, causing less damage to the environment. This pig has been recently approved for limit production in Canada. It will take years before the pig is approved by the U.S. and Canadian government, but it has hopes of making a tremendous change to the environment. Molecular breeding has recently been used to adjust crops to withstand climate change, also known as genomic selection. It assists in identifying which genotype is superior. Because of the efficiency of the molecular breeding, it was suggested as the breeding method for brassica oilseed crops. These crops are wanted to be drought and salt tolerant. Molecular breeding has brought new ideas to the table, including genetic transformation and genetic diversity assessment. If you look to the left of the screen, you can see examples of this. Conventional breeding on the left, and genetic modification on the right. Hydroponics is a subset of hydroculture, which is a method of growing plants without soil by instead using mineral nutrient solutions in a water solvent. Terrestrial plants may be grown with only their roots exposed to the nitrous liquid, or the roots may be physically supported by inner mediums such as perlite or gravel. The nutrients used in hydroponic systems can come from an array of different sources, including, but not limited to, from fish excrement, duck manure, or purchased chemical fertilizers. Plants commonly grown hydroponically include tomato, peppers, cucumbers, lettuces, and marijuana. This works by tripling the nutrient-rich solution over to the root of the plant, similar to the conveyor belt. The solution is constantly going over the roots of the plant. This works best on tomatoes and strawberries. Hydroponics is important because if there is land to farm, but the soil is not good quality, then they can build a hydroponics system. On the left, you can see a diagram that explains the way and draws out the way a hydroponic system works. Another process that is associated with hydroponics is aeroponics. You would use what is called an aerogarden to carry out this process. It is very similar to the hydroponic system, except instead the roots being in a nutrient-rich solution, they are in a container of humid air. This is essentially a nutrient-rich aerosol. Unlike hydroponics, where you have to make sure the plants are getting the correct amount of nutrients, the AeroGarden has a computer system that checks everything and makes sure it is correct. The basic principle of aeroponic growing is to grow plants suspended in a closed or semi-closed environment by spraying the plant's dangling roots and lower stem with an atomized or sprayed nutrient-rich water solution. The leaves and crown, often called the canopy, extend above. The roots of the plant are separated by the plant support structure. Often, closed-cell foam is compressed around the lower stem and inserted into an opening of the aeroponic chamber, which decreases labor and expense. For larger plants, trestling is used to suspend the weight of vegetation and fruit. Ideally, the environment is kept free from pests and disease so that the plants may grow healthier and more quickly than the plants grow in a medium. However, since most aeroponic environments are not perfectly closed off to the outside, pests and disease may still cause a threat. Controlled environments advance place development, health, growth, flowering, and fruiting for any given plant species and cultivars. Aquaponics has ancient roots, although there is some debate on its first occurrence. Aztec cultivated agriculture islands known as Chinampas, and a system considered by some to be the first form of aquaponics for agricultural use, where plants were raised on the stationary or sometimes movable islands in lake shallows and waste materials dredged from the Chinampa canals and surrounding cities were used to manually irrigate the plants. Aquaponics is the process of growing plants by combining the processes of aquaculture, fish farming, and hydroponics. The feces from the fish is used as fertilizer for the plants. Then the leftover water is returned to the fish tank. Aquaponics mimics a natural ecosystem. It takes the best of both aquaculture and hydroponics and makes a super growing system by eliminating the drawbacks of each of the process. If you look to the right, you can see another diagram that explains the system of aquaponics. Growing against hydroponics, aquaponics is a greater of the two processes. The first advantage is nutrients. Compared to buying nutrients for the hydroponic system, fish food is a lot cheaper and creates a lot more nutrients than you could buy for the same amount of money. The second advantage is aquaponics mimics the natural process. If antibiotics are given to the fish, then the plants will suffer. Inversely, if pesticides are given to the plants, the fish will suffer. The third advantage is zero waste. You never have to change the water in the tank. You simply fill it up as it evaporates. Lastly, aquaponics is more productive than hydroponics. Thank you for taking the time and listening to our future scanning of agriculture. For more information about the future of agriculture, feel free to take a look at our bibliography page and check out any of our sources, or you can download this app below at the top of the screen, or check out the video that is in the bottom right of the screen.